The shape language is a type of visual language that uses simple geometric forms to convey gameplay possibilities to. The shape language is intuitively understood even by young children and requires no instruction, as it is based on our real-world experiences. If you take a look at the design of any modern playground, you'll find a full range of basic geometric forms, such as steps. On a playground, a child learns how to interact with their surroundings and begins to understand the physics. Through play, a child develops an understanding of what to expect. That's why it's so important for a level designer to build environments using Next, we'll explore examples of the most commonly used shapes, examine the feelings they evoke, and see how they influence player behavior. Sharp shapes are subconsciously associated with pain and tend to evoke a sense of. Pointed objects are most commonly used to mark the edges of the player. For example, in urban environments, this role is effectively played by. In natural environments, space can be limited by sharp tree branches and roots, thorny bushes, icicles, stone stalactites, and sharp forms can also be used to create a sense of discomfort. Sharp shapes are perfect for signaling danger. In most games, damage-dealing elements are designed using pointed and jagged forms. Since sharpness is instinctively perceived as dangerous, players tend to avoid physical contact with such objects. Steps are another key environmental element whose shape is easily recognizable from a distance, and whose upon closer inspection, nearly every level in a platforming game is filled. In natural environments, step-like shapes are often formed by terraces, sunken parts of the landscape, or ruins. The step shape can also be used creatively to design puzzles, allowing the player to form a set of stairs using movable objects, such as boxes, carts, dumpsters, and so on. The shape of a ramp, also known as a slope or incline, catches the eye and naturally guides the player's attention. To climb a set of stairs, the player usually has to press the jump buttons. When players need to move quickly through a level, they will usually prefer ramps over stairs. From a gameplay perspective, ramps can also serve as an engaging puzzle element. You can give the player the opportunity to create a ramp themselves by performing a certain action. A steep slope is used to serve two main. You can establish a natural boundary without relying on invisible walls or out-of-place fences by smartly using terrain features. A steep drop is an effective way to enforce one-way movement through a location, to direct the player in a single direction or prevent backtracking to a previous area. Designers often use a sharp slope that allows for a quick descent but cannot be climbed back up. Round or cylindrical objects are inherently unstable. They can be easily pushed or rolled. These shapes are also frequently used as natural space. If sharp objects are associated with danger, rounded shapes are their complete opposite. They subconsciously attract and evoke a sense of safety. If you want certain elements of the environment to be perceived as safe, use smoothly contoured objects, like inflatable rings, cushions, mattresses, and so on, or fluffy vegetation, such as leafy trees, thick bushes, haystacks, etc. Bars or horizontal rails are ideal for bars are also commonly used in the visual design of objects that can be pulled. When several bars are arranged vertically in a row, they form the familiar shape of a ladder. This approach is typically used in situations where a traditional staircase wouldn't fit the context and needs to be substituted with other objects. An opening of any shape naturally draws attention, encourages exploration, and is a favorite trick among designers is to block the main entrances to buildings, forcing the player to find an alternate way inside, often beginning with a hole in the wall or a giant shattered window. An empty window frame without glass is an effective way to communicate gameplay possibilities. This detail, openings of any shape, visually invite the player to throw something through them. The shape of the opening itself often hints at which object is the right size or shape to fit through. Rectangular shapes convey a sense of confidence and stability. Unlike spheres or cylinders, rectangular blocks are hard to move and cannot. Rectangular platforms communicate to the player which areas of the... In most shooters, rectangular blocks are the fundamental building elements used to construct combat arenas. The rectangular shape clearly signals which objects the player can hide behind for safety. To summarize, by combining different shapes effectively, a designer can convey information about accessible and inaccessible areas, guide player movement, and mark safe or dangerous objects. When prototyping a level, begin communicating with the player using the shape language, and only then, if needed, add other types of visual language. Scripted scenes are a type of visual language that uses staged events involving character. By nature, scripted scenes resemble theatrical performances, in which a scripted event unfolds before the player's eyes. Creating such events is labor-intensive and expensive, as it requires the collaboration of various specialists to produce content, such as animations, visual effects, voice acting, and more. Most often, scripted scenes are used to deliver story and atmosphere. They help breathe life into the game world and fill it with background activity. Scripted scenes are great for teaching new mechanics. If training is integrated into the scripted scenes can demonstrate the cost of failure by showing other characters falling into traps instead of the player. Scripted scenes can also hint at new gameplay opportunities. For example, characters in dialogue might inadvertently reveal a new way to infiltrate a guarded area. Scripted scenes are a powerful tool for introducing enemies. Usually, the goal is to showcase the enemy's behavior and traits before the main character directly encounters them in combat. In combat-oriented levels, scripted scenes help draw attention to incoming enemy waves, setting the focus of the battle. These could involve enemy troops landing from air or ground vehicles, dramatic explosions, or breaches in walls. When enemies appear out of nowhere, it often frustrates players. Therefore, scripted scenes are commonly used to signal danger. For example, in stealth-oriented levels, enemy introductions are often framed through a short scene where the enemy speaks or performs an action to signal their presence. This gives players a chance to hide before being spotted. When creating scripted scenes, it's important, for example, the player can be placed in a confined space. Scripted scenes should be placed in narrow passages or junctions. These bottlenecks ensure that another method of directing attention involves restricting the player's camera movement. For instance, the player might be climbing a ladder or sliding down a rope. In conclusion, scripted scenes are expensive to produce, but they are a spectacular and effective way to convey visual information. However, they require deliberate player attention management to succeed. The symbol language is a type of visual language that uses symbols to communicate game. When the shape language is not enough, the symbol language comes into. The first type of signal is the sign. Signs are the simplest and most effective tools for visually. Just like in real life, signs in games can be used to warn players about danger. This gives attentive players a chance to avoid trouble or accidental death. Conveying information through embedded text messages in the environment works best in slower-paced games. Players are more likely to read signs if they serve a function. That is, if they provide useful gameplay-related information. The faster the pace of the game, the more beneficial it is to replace text with icons. Signs with embedded maps help players form a mental image of the location's layout and the positions of key objects. Well-designed signs can also serve as motivation to explore. This can be done by placing images of existing in-game locations along with prompts or invitations to visit them. When it comes to designing the visual content of signs, using icons is usually in open-world games. Signs are used to simplify navigation. Road signs and settlement nameplates help players avoid constantly checking the map.